Yeah, man, he broke our record. He fit 17 marshmallows. No, no, not in his mouth. Anyway, I gotta make a video. I'll call you back. Hey guys, welcome to another video on the FX5. And if you are wondering, even though I had the camera for a couple days, yes, I'm going to milk this content as much as I can. So if you haven't seen my FX5 review, I highly recommend to check it out if you want to know kind of all the ins and outs of that camera. But in today's video, we're going to get a little more granular in comparing it directly to the Nikon ZR. Now in my longer review, we did briefly compare it to the Nikon ZR, but I have a few more shots lined up and we're just going to go into a little more detail in how these cameras are similar and how these cameras are different. Spoiler alert, I am not going to say which one is better or worse because I don't think either one is. As a matter of fact, I probably won't be that opinionated about anything in this video. This is really more to show you just the differences of these cameras, which is why I am sitting at my desk and I have DaVinci open, because it would be a monumental disservice to you guys if I just showed you clips. If I properly exposed both of these cameras and I just showed you guys clips, you might be able to tell subtle differences, but I don't think you'd really be able to tell anything more than that. Properly exposed, both these cameras are going to look absolutely gorgeous. So I wanted to give you guys more of the full story, from log all the way to a finished product. And for that, we are going to go in DaVinci and actually play with this footage, and you guys can kind of see in real time how we can stretch it, push it, pull it, etc. That sounds like a good song.
Stretch it, push it, pull it, etc. Stretch it, push it, pull it, etc.
Let's pretend that didn't happen. So before we jump inside of my computer, just a couple caveats. One, as usual, let's try not to troll in the comments. I know that's gonna happen anyway, but it's exhausting. If you don't like the cameras, you don't like the cameras. We don't need to hear about it. It comes off extremely unprofessional and it's just really a waste of time. But if you do have constructive criticism or feedback, we are all about that. For example, I did a Nikon ZR color workflow many months back, and at the time I was just kind of using a very basic film bias LUT workflow. And a few of you jumped into the comments and said with raw footage you should do color space transforms. So that would be your working color space, whichever camera you're using, into DaVinci Intermediate and Wide Gamut, and then out to Rec 709. And guess what? That's my new workflow now. So I learned something from you guys. I already knew about color space transforms, I just never really used them or incorporated them into my workflow. That is a great example of what this channel is about. A community where we learn from each other. Hopefully you guys watching my videos get some kind of takeaway and maybe learn something. And in return, with good, positive, constructive feedback or criticism, I can learn from you guys. To me, that is what the filmmaking community is all about. So let's try to keep it that way. My additional caveat is I am not a professional colorist. So we are going to be pretty basic in this workflow. I am using color space transforms. We're gonna push and pull shadows and highlights. We're gonna up the saturation. We're just gonna do simple things like that. Although I do color a lot of my own work, I really try to get it in camera as best as I can. And for bigger projects, I hire colorists, and they know a lot more than I do. So take this stuff with a grain of salt. I'm sure there's no right or wrong way to do it, but I will say, however I'm doing it, I'm sure is pretty basic. Okay, with that said, let's look at some footage. All right, we got a little moodier because I'm probably just gonna be a small box in the corner. We're mostly gonna focus on what we're working on in front of me here. So we're gonna go through a few different things. Resolution, dynamic range, color fidelity, and general push-pull. Overexposure, underexposure, how much you can kind of get the image back and how usable it is. Now I found myself between a rock and a hard place when it came to exposure on these cameras. If I were to expose them individually for their best settings, I would have got flack in the comments because that could be chalked up to user error, that could be chalked up to, well, you changed both settings on both cameras, so we don't really know what is what and what you did. And if I expose the cameras the exact same with all the same settings, that's not perfect either because I'm not optimizing each camera for its best exposure. So basically it's a lose-lose situation. I decided to expose the cameras the exact same way because that's just gonna tell me a little more about how they behave. But I do want to make a note that these cameras do expose differently. You should treat them differently. It's just like film stock. That's how we should treat camera sensors. Every sensor is gonna be a little bit different. Some cameras are gonna want more light, some are going to need less light. It just depends. I think from what we could see, especially with shadow detail, the Nikon ZR needs a little more light. That is nothing new. All of us have been saying that for almost a year now. And we've been saying it with RED cameras in general, pretty much since the first one came out. So that's not new information. REDs generally want more light. Now, I don't say need because it really depends on what you're shooting, but they tend to want more light. You'll get a cleaner image and cleaner noise if you expose maybe a stop over and then bring it down. Whereas I found with the FX5, I could bake the image in a little more. Anyway, let's get back to it. All right, so let's jump in here. First, I think let's go with color fidelity. So we're in the color section here, and we have the ZR in NRAW, okay? And we can already see, and this has been a noted kind of problem, that the blue channel seems to kind of clip. Now, if we throw just a standard LUT on this to Rec. 709, we do get some of that back, but there's not like a ton of wiggle room in it. It's, you know, maybe a little bit, but not too much. And then if we really kind of want to stretch this, it's actually a very flexible image. It does start to break when we really kind of crush it, but I do think NRAW is kind of slept on. It is a nice codec. It's just kind of weird that, again, this blue channel kind of clips here. Now, when we go to the FX5, we'll just do a color space transform. So you can see here, we're just in S-Log3 to DaVinci wide gamut, and then out to Rec. 709. And we can see here, let's go ahead and, you can see it definitely handles color differently. And if we take these highlights down, you know, this is pretty blown out here. We do seem to have a little more detail in kind of the light here. But we're looking at color, right? So let's stick to color. And I would say we can push and pull this a decent amount, but we are throwing a lot of color at it. And we go to the red. Now we can see a huge difference just in the log itself. The red does not clip this blue channel at all. So these are extremely different log images, right? The red is handling it just fine. Very, very different outcomes when we just do straight to Rec. 709. So this is N log to Rec. 709 in just a LUT, and this is our color space transform. Very different. And we can also kind of, you know, stretch this quite a bit. I would say it has a similar breaking point to the FX5 when it comes to color information. But again, this is not a scientific test. I'm just kind of messing around here. But if we want to kind of put these back at the regular settings, we can see that they definitely handle the transform differently. The FX5 seems to expose a little under, whereas the red adds a pretty decent amount of exposure, even though the log images are very similar as far as exposure. And if we want to like boost the saturation, you know, that's at 100% and 100%. I would say they behave pretty differently, but we can see there's a little more richness in the blues here, but we can get that back with the ZR. Yeah, I'd say they behave pretty similar. You know, and we're breaking the image on purpose, right? You should never color grade like this, but I will say, as far as like color fidelity and pushing and pulling colors, at least on highly saturated, like lots of color type of images like these, I'm not noticing a huge difference. I think 12-bit is so much more than enough. The 16-bit linear, I think, is going to behave kind of similar to the 12-bit red raw. I think where we'll see a bigger difference in that 16-bit linear with color is more in the actual dynamic range and exposure, how much color information it holds on to over and underexposed things compared to the ZR. On shots with just actual saturated colors, I think they're gonna behave pretty similar. All right, here if we go to resolution, I'm just going to throw, this is just from my FX5 review. This is shot in red raw in 6K. This is shot in XOCN C1, I believe, in 5K. And if we go here, let's just punch in, let's go like 400%. And let's go 400% here. And honestly, I think these are pretty similar. If you look at the detail in my mustache and in the eyes here, I think they're pretty similar. I think I prefer the FX5 a little more. Maybe it just has like a better OLPF filter, but there seems to be something a little smoother, even though it still has an extremely resolute image. Yeah, so I think when it comes to resolution, yes, technically the ZR is more. It's 6K versus 5K. In real world editing and workflow, I'm not seeing a huge difference, especially when punching in at 400%. They seem to behave kind of similar. So I wouldn't call that like a huge deal breaker. If you're like, what should I get, 5K versus 6K? I don't think it's gonna matter that much in actual workflow scenarios. And we're very rarely zooming in at 400%, right? It's not something that's gonna happen that often. So if we are looking at these just back to their regular settings, they're both really resolute. I would say they're tack sharp. Okay, that's resolution. Let's look at highlight roll-off real quick. Now I should warn you guys, this is probably the least scientific test in this whole video. I love golden hour, I love sunsets, but more importantly, this is a quick way of how I get to just kind of judge shadow detail, highlights, and more so highlight roll-off, is just pointing it at the sun, pretty much. I do that on almost every camera I've ever shot with. It's more of a personal test for me to kind of see where these cameras lie within other ones I've used. So let's just take a quick look at that. We'll add color space transforms to both, and you can see really quickly that the FX5 leans more magenta, and the Nikon ZR leans a little more green. As far as straight to Rec. 709, I think both of these look great. They have very similar highlight roll-off, shadow detail. You can see a little more of the sun here, and just to kind of amplify this, let's just lower our exposure by quite a bit on both of these cameras. Let's see, we were at 120. Let's go to around the same on here. Let's actually even go a little more. And here we can actually start to see some of these differences. Now, these were at the same exact settings. They're very similar. They're very similar, but if we zoom in, we do see this kind of like harsh clip, and then this kind of orb around it that's basically clipped, but a little bit of a gradient, and then we kind of get the sky detail. Whereas the FX5, we get much more of a gradient. It's much more of a gradient. There's not like a super harsh clipping point. There kind of is, but it kind of bleeds out then into the sky. Whereas the ZR, we get sort of this double clipping pattern, which is kind of strange. But again, you're never really gonna wanna stretch your images like this in the first place. So if we just bring these back to regular exposure, I think they behave pretty similar. Now we'll see this in the upcoming clips when we really push and pull the image, but I will say in kind of a real world scenario, shooting at golden hour, these cameras are gonna behave again, pretty similar. I know everyone like craps on the ZR for having bad dynamic range. I have yet to see this camera have bad dynamic range. It has really good dynamic range, especially in the highlights. It does lack in the shadows, and we will see that shortly. But for real world shooting, kind of out in the desert, in the sun, these behave kind of similar. All right, so let's go to our over and under exposures. Now, these are properly exposed. So this is exposing for the inside. Our talent looks well lit right here by that window light. Now the outside is going to be blown out, or is it? Let's see, on the red, yes, we are losing detail. And you can see even in the log images here. I'll just show you because we can actually see it on the waveform. Our clipping point right here compared to our clipping point up here. So we can already get an idea just with the log image that the FX5 is going to have more highlight information. But when we throw our LUTs on to both of these, we can see that similar thing we saw when we were looking at the color, the kind of saturated color shots that we did. These handle the color space transforms differently, right? So the Nikon ZR is going to appear to expose a little more than the FX5, and this appears a little darker. But these cameras did have the exact same settings. Now, if we go into the clip here and we just lower our general exposure, we can see blue in the sky here. I want you to keep an eye on that because when we go to the red, we cannot. No matter how much I lower this exposure, we can see a very clear clipping point where there is just not detail and color information in the sky. Now there is a good amount of detail here with these trees and the buildings, and that's very nice. But look how much more we get out of the window here in the FX5. It's just a lot more color information. Now I think this is where that 16-bit linear married with the dynamic range of the FX5 is doing the more heavy lifting, because we are not only holding on to detail out here in the sky, but we are holding on to color detail and color information. Whereas the ZR, we just lose it. Now these two clips are the same, except this one was shot in dual gain. So this is to test if dual gain gives us any more highlight information. And we can see here, I can already tell by the waveform that it's not going to, but we'll just give this a try. And it does not, yeah. So these are going to be very similar. Not very, they're going to be identical. And then the red, again, clipped, no detail. FX5, blue skies, bright green tree, lots of detail. So that test shows us, yes, there is more wiggle room in the highlights in the FX5. There's more color information, but also the dual gain mode does not give you more highlight information. And that's going to be important when we go into underexposure. Basically, kind of the rule of thumb with their dual gain is they want you to expose to protect your highlights, and then you can trust that you have so much shadow information that you could bring that back. So let's take a look. We can actually do that right now. Actually, let's pivot. Let's do overexposure first, because this is also going to show us highlight detail. So, color space transforms for everybody. These are blown out, okay? This was on purpose. we meant to really overexpose these images. And again, we're just gonna do this quick and dirty, make it easy on ourselves. We are going to just let's bring down the ISO to 100, even more. Let's bring it down to 50, okay? And we can see here, we are losing a third of detail on her face here. Everything else looks decent, like the skin on her arms and chest and neck looks decent, but we're losing a lot of detail here. Let's see, we were at ISO 50, let's do the same here. Let's just bring this down to ISO 50 and look at the difference here. We are almost losing no detail. A little bit here, just on the edge where the light is directly hitting her. But look at the difference here. Okay, that's a huge difference. When we look at these images, we are holding, there's also kind of like a green wash on her skin that's not so pleasant, and I think that gets, obviously the Nikon ZR in Red Raw does lean green, but I think when we start really stretching the image like this, it's showing up in ways that isn't really that pretty. Whereas here we are holding on to not only a lot more detail in her face, but also the color. There's just more life in her face on the FX5. And it's not leaning too heavy magenta or anything like that. I would say there's just more life in general. It just looks better. You know, when she's staring out at the window here compared to here, look at how much we are losing on her face here. I mean, this is not usable at all. Whereas here, even when she's looking out, everything is there. Everything on her face is there. And it maintains much better skin tones and color. So that's a win for the FX5 as far as highlight recovery. Now let's go to the really cool part. This part's fun. I'm gonna try and make this quick. Underexposure. This is massively underexposed, okay? Throw this LUT on, very underexposed. And we will do the same here. And again, because the FX5 handles the color space transform a little differently, it seems to appear even more underexposed. But again, if we look at the log, very similar exposures, okay? The cameras and lenses were the exact same settings. So very similar, they just seem to handle the transform differently. Now, let's just be silly. Let's go to our color wheels here. Let's just raise the shadows 100, all the way. Let's just be dumb, okay? This is gross, right? This is nasty. There's so much noise. If we look in the blacks over here, so much noise. Very colored, not very pleasant. Let's go 100 on here. Similar story. Lots of noise, also colored, does not look great. This is regular 800 ISO, by the way. I wouldn't think either one of these are that usable. Now, dual gain, 800. Let's go all the way. Look at this. Look at how clean this image is. We just boosted our shadows by 100%. Look at the difference here. Like, I don't even have words. All this noise, same in the ZR, all this gross noise. Now, dual gain. So much cleaner. So much cleaner, completely usable. This is insane. If there was a reason to pay more money to buy a camera and get the FX5, this would be my reason. This puts it in Alexa territory because you can really protect your highlights and trust that you have so much shadow information. I would probably mostly use this for narrative filmmaking, and I'm not really doing any crazy camera movement in the types of films that I shoot. So the rolling shutter is not gonna bother me. And even with dual gain, it's not that crazy. It does double the readout speed, but it's still pretty manageable. You're still not gonna get this like horrific jello effect. It's pretty much gonna be on par with other full frame cameras. Now in regular 800, yes, you will have a much faster readout speed. So it really just depends on what you're shooting. I would certainly, I think, mostly have the camera on dual gain mode at all times. Now, this is with no noise reduction. So let's even get crazier here. Let's add a node at the beginning and add just a little bit of noise reduction. Look at how clean this is. Like, I'm grinning because this feature is so insane. Now, if we do the same thing here, whoops, and we add a little bit of noise reduction, actually, let's even add a lot. Like, let's go crazy. Like, yeah, it cleaned up some of the noise, but it added a very digital, you know, kind of, it really, we lost a lot of detail, it smoothed a lot of things out. Let's copy and paste this node. Yes, it smoothed things out, but it almost, there's like, it's very digital. You know, this is not the type of strength you'd want to use with noise reduction. But even so, Let's go here. Let's like pull some highlights back. Okay, we get a little more blue in the sky. Same here, and then we go here. And again, like, you're just getting such a clean, usable image with the dual gain. So that feature's insane to me. Basically, it's taking the 4000 base ISO and the 800 and kind of merging them together. But where it's doing that is in the shadows. So the highlights are gonna be pretty much the same. The shadows, clearly, you can tell from here, massively different, okay? Way more information in the shadows. I'm gonna get rid of these noise reduction nodes to show you guys one other thing here. Let's go even crazier. Let's raise the shadows to 100 again on the second node here. We'll bring the highlights back up as well. Okay, so the FX5, which we're looking at now, very gross colored noise, right? But you would never want to push your image this much, but it's gross. Same with the ZR, but there's something, I don't know if you guys can see it on your end. With YouTube compression, it might not show up. But the reason I want to do this is because the ZR has like a pulsating rhythm to its noise, which I do not find pleasing at all. Kind of the fact that, like, this is really to see noise patterns. You would never want to use any image like this, obviously. But if you wanted to look at the patterns of noise, this is a good way to do it. And there's like a pulsating. So even if you exposed your image properly, the fact that I kind of know that that pulsating pattern is happening in the shadows on the ZR doesn't really sit that well with me. Whereas on the FX5, again, this is double boosted, 100, so 200%, right? And it's just such a fine noise pattern. And then even on the regular mode, it's not pretty. It's not pretty, but it's not pulsating. It still has like grain to it, and it's just kind of jumping around. But on the ZR, it has like this kind of line skipping, pulsating thing to it, which I don't love. Anyway, clearly FX5 wins in the shadows. And then this was the last shot I queued up. Nothing special. I already put some color on these, color space transform, minor tint shift, just to show you guys you can get these to match pretty easily. So this is the ZR in red, and this is the FX5. I also wanted to take a look at motion cadence. Pretty similar, you know, both these cameras have fast readout speeds. I think they both look nice as far as motion cadence. They both look pretty filmic to my eye. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had time for. Again, I did not have the camera for that long, so I tried to just pop off some shots that I could get for you guys to compare the cameras directly to one another. As far as which one's better or worse, I don't think that exists. I don't think either one is better or worse. They do things differently. The FX5 does have more dynamic range. That's true. It also has another base ISO, so it has a triple base. That is true. But I really think it comes down to budget and preference. Do you like the red look? I've always found red has a very kind of thick, saturated, resolute commercial look to it, and I think that's a great look. If you prefer that look, the Nikon ZR is the camera for you. I think Sony and the whole cinema line, from the Venice 2 all the way down, has a little more of a softer look. It's just kind of like I hesitate to call it more filmic, but I do think red has more of like a commercial look, and I think Sony has maybe more of a filmic look. But don't get me wrong, both these cameras are highly capable of very cinematic images. They just have kind of different looks to them. I personally don't prefer one over the other. I think they're both great cameras. I think they're honestly both so good. And you know, the context is always gonna matter a bit because I'm a guy that started on like an FS100, you know, this old Sony camera, and the GH3, I think, the Panasonic GH3, and then the Panasonic GH4. So that was back when every camera release did have major improvements and the cameras had major differences. And DaVinci wasn't as good as it is either. So now with everything that DaVinci Resolve does and just how good all these cameras are, you really can't go wrong. It's just down to personal preference and budget because one of these cameras is twice as much as the other. So I'm not gonna tell you guys what to do. I'm not gonna tell you which camera is better or which one you prefer or which one I prefer. I'm shooting on the ZR right now. I don't have plans to sell this camera anytime soon. And I do have plans to buy an FX5 because I love both of these cameras and I will use them for different reasons. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. I know it was not scientific, it was quick and dirty, but I just wanted to show you guys some real world examples of how these cameras differ. And I will see you on the next one.